Hi everybody, I'm hoping I can get through this without the flicker gremlin finding out that I'm trying to play. On the work table here is the piece of cotton that you saw me throwing paint on the other day. I'm going to make a garment from it. My inspiration was this jacket coat that I saw on the internet. It's a very Asian styling jacket, so I realise I can easily hack this from my 30 coats pattern, which is what I'm going to do. Okay, so these are little diagrams that I made, front and back, and I'm going to put patch pockets here. And here's the fabric. Now I'm going to work in my usual way of combining lots of different fabrics, and this pattern obviously has got the potential to do that because the bands, the peplin, the waistbanding, the turn back cuffs all lend themselves to being different kinds of fabrics. So working in the way that I usually do, I went through my collection of fabrics and stuff and selected a whole lot of stuff in the colours that will tie in well with this. This is another piece I've printed. Here's a couple of fragments from my collection. This blue has been a lovely tablecloth at some stage. Okay, Flicker Gremlin has discovered me. Sorry people. More stuff I've printed. Fabulous needle cord paisley fabric. Couple of meters there. Thrift shopped for $3. Another fragment of something I've printed. More stuff I've printed and started to do a bit of running stitch around. And a patchwork together offcut from another project. So I've got these pieces put aside, which I may or may not include in the jacket. Now these pieces here that I'm about to show you now, I printed yesterday. I had they're printed on fabric from this green cotton sheet that I bought at some stage. So I've torn off strips of this sheet, and yesterday I was playing around with some printing techniques, and I printed these pieces. And at some stage I'll go through showing you how they were printed and tied and dyed and the various techniques I've used. This one is the most elaborate one, and I can't decide which side I like the most. This side's got paint a bit more heavily on it, and this side not so densely painted. So those bits will probably become bands or something, some such feature on the jacket. Now I've hacked the pattern already, meaning I've taken my 30 coats pattern and already cut it into a pattern that will resemble the jacket that I showed you, and I've already made the lining. This lining is cut from a cotton doona cover. There you go. So that's going to be inside the jacket. So this is just the top part. The bands will be here, and then the peplin lower down. Now here we go. These are the fronts and the backs of the pattern. I'm calling it Manzano. yeah, so there we go. I'm going to cut it, the two fronts right now. Cutting in my usual way to absolutely minimize my wasteful offcuts. So I'm lining that sleeve edge up there on the selvage. Okay, a couple of my metal plates on there to weight it down while I cut it. Okay, so that's the left and right fronts. And this is the back. Okay, I shall be back in a few minutes to show you what I've stitched up for there. I'm about to cut the sleeves. I used up the large piece of painted textile I had, so I've patched together the remainder of the painted textile with one of my other ones here, and having made this piece of patchwork, that's literally all of the original painted textile that I have left over that's theoretically waste or not going to be used, and that of course will go into my collection of stuff to possibly be incorporated into another garment at some time in the future. Now I'm going to, I've checked that I've got enough reconstituted fabric here to cut the sleeves. So here we go, here's one. I'm marking this with chalk. This is going to be the outside of the sleeves. Very good. Oh yes, if anyone's ever noticed in earlier videos this patch that I've had down here, this is because I had written a little quote down on my work table. I listen to YouTube videos a lot when I'm working in the studio, and one of the people I like to listen to is Jordan Peterson, and I wrote this quote down one day: the proclivity to demonize the outgroup is at least 6 million years old. Brilliant. And as a member of the outgroup, I found it reassuring that this has been normal human behaviour for millions of years, that we hate on each other and cast out the ones that are, you know, not necessarily joining in the groupthink. Jordan Peterson is not somebody I would normally have been listening to until recently, until I had my radicalization experience in the last couple of years. I used to be as far left as possible politically, rusted on Greens voter for 40 years. And when I learned about the mad, crazy, bizarre cult of transgender ideology, I was absolutely shocked to the bone, and I recognised pretty promptly what an incredible threat to women's rights transgender ideology is. Quite simply because if a man can be a woman just by saying he's got the lady feels and be entitled to all our rights and to go into the places that women have set aside for our own safety and dignity. So if a man can be a woman just because he's got the lady feels, well, what the hell is a woman? What is a woman? A lot of people really don't know what a woman is these days, and it's incredibly shocking. It's the biggest and most frightening assault on women's human rights for a couple of 100 years. Okay, now there is my other sleeve. So, back in a little bit of time to show you the upper front part of the jacket stitched together. Okay, I'm putting the lining into the top. I've pressed all the seams open on the lining, and I've top stitched the seams on the outside. Okay, now the next step is going to be, well, I'm going to sew these edges down here first and turn these out so that the sleeves are hemmed with the lining. But the next significant process here is to put the front bands on around this back neck and the front edges. So that means I'll need to select a fabric to cut the front bands from. One of these that I've dyed and printed. Maybe that's okay. So I'm going to cut these front bands and put them in there and be back again. Progress review. Okay, the bands are in. This is the jacket, and you may recall that in my diagram I was going to put like a band here and then a deeper peplum down here, but because I'm in a bit of a hurry, I really need to get this finished and start to get on with the work that I should be doing, my commissions. I'm just going to put this flap just directly onto that hem at the moment, just so I can get it finished quicker, and perhaps at some time in the future when I make this design again I might put the band in. So I shall be back momentarily, well probably more like 10 or 15 minutes, to show you the finished result. Finished. I'm presenting before you my first prototype Manzano jacket, finished, and I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's worked well. The back, this is a fully lined jacket. It's taken me about 4 hours to make it, so it's pretty simple. It's been fully lined with sheets, this patterned sheet and this sheet that I've printed just yesterday. Turn back cuff on the sleeve, but you don't have to have that. That can just be a straight sleeve. Now I stitched this little remnant piece of fabric on around the waist here. This piece of fabric was actually strips that I cut off the bands. When I cut out the bands, I just guessed, and I've cut them. I felt they were going to be too wide. I wanted a relatively narrow band on there, so I cut strips off the side. So these remnant strips of band I've sewed on around the waist there, and I think that's worked really well, and it's much simpler than the other way I was initially thinking of, which is inserting it into the jacket. And I do love a button, so I've been going through my button collection and I found this lovely big brown wooden button, and I think I'm going to put that button on there and a buttonhole. And I'm still debating about pockets, patch pockets perhaps, in the front here. I'm kind of really liking this print, so I'm a bit reluctant to cover it up, but my God, don't we all love a pocket? So there you go, the very first Manzano jacket, hot off my sewing machine.